Get in here. Come on, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's wait a couple of more minutes to get more people in, and then we are going to start tonight. So I will be right back with you. Thank you for joining me. If you're on YouTube, comment, like, subscribe, share with somebody. And then if you are on Facebook, thank you. Remember, we are in the comments live tonight. So I need you to engage with me, get in the comments, and let's have a conversation based on the topic tonight. I'll be back in 1 and 1. Good evening, everybody. This is Teacher Talks. I am your host, Dr. Christopher Holmes. I'm so glad that you have decided to join me this evening. Wow, what a field 48 hours here in the United States of America, as well as here in the state of Georgia, which is where I live. A lot we could cover tonight, but I am not a political commentary show. I am an educational commentary show where I deal with issues related to public education in America. So, not going to touch a lot of things, but because this is America, there are some things that happen around us that we want to discuss in this particular show. And tonight, we are talking about how do educators, specifically leaders and teachers, affirm and demonstrate value to all of their students in the midst of this current United States of America. And of course, we are dealing with the issues that have occurred in the last 48 hours in America. Also, we'll be discussing the pandemic itself and how do you value and affirm your students in these tough, difficult times. As always, I say it is after 9 o'clock, and it's actually 9:08 here on the East Coast. So I hope that your kids are down. I hope that your cup is up because it's time for the adults to catch up. So, if you had the opportunity to view, it wasn't a teacher talk last night. It was just an impromptu conversation that I had amongst some friends of mine as black men, and I entitled that topic last night, "My Race, My Place, My America." It was such a rich conversation. So, if you did not see the conversation we had last night, go to my YouTube channel. That video is still there. It was a rich conversation. The age ranges of the men that were on that show span about 25, 30 years. And so you got different experiences of people in the country, how they related to things that are happening in this country, how they felt about those things in the country, their position in place, and trying to make things better. And then at the end, we talked about what we were optimistic about and encouraged about as black men in America. So again, if you missed the show last night, go watch the show last night. Also, share that with anybody that is a black male in your family, in your circle, at your job. I promise you, they will enjoy the conversation. They will hopefully be richly encouraged and also it's very thought provoking. And they will leave there really thinking about their place and their position in this country and how do they help us move forward as a country, as a culture, and as a community. So for all of you that watched last night and got in the comments and really, really, really engaged with us, thank you so much. I mean, I've gotten so many conversations, so many emails, so many text messages and phone calls about that conversation last night that I think I'm going to have to do it again. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to fit that into my schedule. I'm not quite sure how often I'm going to do it, but I'm definitely going to do it. So be looking out for the conversation among the brothers happening again. Next week, though, I'm going to do that show, but I'm going to do it with sisters. So if you are interested in being a part of that conversation, hit me up. I will try to get as many people as I can, but I'm maxed out at 5. So if you want to do the show next week, my race, my place, my America, and you are a black African American woman and you want to, or brown woman, or anybody that wants to be on that show, hit me up, get in my DMs, get in my messages, and we are going to have that conversation among the ladies. And I'm sure it's going to be a different conversation, but it's going to be as rich and as deep as the one we had last night. So, Miss Burnett, thank you for watching. I see you, not Burnett, Miss Bennett. Hey, Laverne, good evening, good evening. Miss Louder, thank you. Good evening. Happy New Year to you too. I hope you had a blessed holiday season. I hope that you were safe. Hope that you were masked up, and I hope that you did not do any unneeded visiting. Let me say that, okay? But I'm glad that you're here. That means you have made it to 2021. So happy to see you, and thank you for joining. Once again, if you are on Facebook, I am on Facebook as well. Get in the comment section, get in the chats. I'm watching, I'm looking. Let me welcome you now. Listen, this doesn't work if you don't engage with me. Okay, it doesn't work if you don't comment. It doesn't engage. It doesn't work if you don't ask questions. And so that is what makes this ship stay afloat, and that is what makes me continue to come back week after week after week, because you all are so faithful and you all are so engaging. Once again, if you're on Periscope, thank you for watching. You too can get in the comment section and be a part of this conversation. Tonight we're going to be, once again, I say about 30 minutes, but you dictate the time that I stay on and engage with you. So it's really up to you, but at minimum 30 minutes. What is going to gauge our conversation tonight is actually going to be a TED Talk, and we're going to watch this in sections. And as we watch it, we're going to stop and have some reflection about what has been said as it relates to affirming and valuing all of your students. And I put emphasis on all because I don't think that we clearly understand or consider who our students are. And we've kind of touched on this a little bit before, but I think it's important that we dive a little bit deeper into that conversation tonight, because I'm going to tailor it towards how students may value and view themselves in the America today, based on what they've seen, based on what they've heard, and based on the perceptions they have inserted in their own minds. And I think those are conversations that we may not always have, either as parents or as administrators or as teachers. Is it a valued conversation? I would say yes, it is. And so I am not one to shy away from controversial conversations or controversial topics, because I think it's only when you embrace and confront the difficult is the time you really experience the most growth in your life. And so if we shy away from those things that are challenging, how are we stretching ourselves? How are we growing? How are we bettering who we are as individuals? Mr. Jackson, hello, sir. Good evening. Happy New Year to you. Miss Jackson, hello to you. Happy New Year. She says, "Hey, honey. Hey, honey. Good to see you. Glad that you're joining me. Glad that you're on here. I see that my brother is on Facebook. He has said, good evening. I've done a much better job, you all, of navigating between these two and also posting what is on Facebook in the chat. And so my effort to do so, you will see that from Facebook, my brother Dexter E. Reynolds says, good evening to you, sir, as well. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Remember, if you're on Facebook, like, comment, share this with somebody. If you're on YouTube, like, share, comment, and subscribe. The subscribers are going up. So I am so proud of that. That means you guys are watching and you're getting more people involved. So without further ado, I want to get into the video that we're going to watch tonight that's going to help guide the conversation that we're going to have. So if you're ready, I'm ready. We're going to watch this in segments of maybe a minute or two. So I'm not going to prolong you with a long video, because I think the conversation is really what's going to enlighten all of us as we watch this and engage in what he's talking about. So let's get it.
Public education, designed during the industrial age, was developed with a factory model in mind. Despite significant advances, very little has changed. I've spent the last 20 years as an educator, a teacher, principal, superintendent, and a parent, and I continue to witness how in these models the same groups of students continue to be overrepresented in education gaps. These students are Indigenous, Black, in particular Black boys, racialized students, that's those who can be categorized by their race other than white, those with special identified learning needs and with disabilities, those coming out of poverty, and 2S LGBT identifying students. The role and impact of identity on educational outcomes is something that we need to become more explicit about addressing in education systems. By identities, I mean all the various ways that we can be identified. For me and for all of us, some of those things include our race, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender, immigration status, religion, and ability.
All right, let's stop there. I want to stop there because some of this could be very rich. Some of the language everybody may not be as familiar with. So I want to stop this in sections and I want to talk about it. Good evening to my mother. Thank you for watching. I see you. Hey, mommy. So the first thing he talks about is student identity. And if you listen closely, he lists several things that students identify themselves as, right? So for me, I identify myself as black. I identify myself as heterosexual. I identify myself as a male. I also identify myself as a husband or as a father. I can identify myself by my class or by my community. I can identify myself by my region. I am a Southern African American male that lives in the United States. There are several things, variables that I can attach myself to that makes who I am as a person very complex. I'm not just singular, right? I'm not just black. I'm not just a man. I'm not just a black man that lives in the South. Students, just like adults, are very, very, very complex individuals. Okay, we didn't used to think of them that way years ago. Many years ago, they were just students, and we grouped students in one category, and we taught them based on that singular idea that you are all students and you all are here to learn a specific set of content, and it is my responsibility to deliver that in a specific unidirectional way. All right, unilaterally, that was supposed to fit everybody. It's not true anymore. I think we understand now that was not the way to do it or the way to go about it. And so we have really adapted different strategies to try to meet the needs of our diverse population of students. Okay. Can you see how that can be a challenge just in general for an educator? If I have different genders, different races, different nationalities, different, as he says, immigration statuses, I can have students of different disability levels, different religions. All of those makes learning complex because it is because of who I am, which determines how I connect to the content or the specific learning goals that you have for me. That's difficult and that's hard. And if you take all of what I just said and put it in the context of what has happened in America in the last 48 hours as a student, how confusing or frustrating or alarming could all of that be as you try to find yourself situated in this America and try to come to terms how people may view you, value you, respect you as a human that carries all those other entities and factors I just talked about in terms of labels. That's not easy as a teacher and as an administrator to instruct, affirm, and value your students. I'm saying it's difficult. Is it necessary? Yes. And it doesn't make it impossible just because it's hard. Let me say it again. It doesn't make it impossible just because it's hard. It's just going to take work, and it's going to take a different mindset, and it's going to take intent, and it's going to take a strategy to do so. And so, as I always say, as a leader, you are accountable for establishing the goals to make things happen. As teachers, it is oftentimes our jobs to implement it. So leaders are accountable, teachers are responsible, but there's still a role that everybody has to play if it's going to happen and if it's going to work. Accountability and responsibility work hand in hand. They are not in isolation if we're talking about school effectiveness. All right. If we're talking about valuing who your students are, all of who they are, not a part. So it's not, I can't come and accept you because you are a female, but I can accept you if you are a homosexual female. I can't disconnect that. Those two things go together because that is who you are. And so I need to affirm you for that and teach you at that same level as I teach all the other students, no matter who you are, because my responsibility is to ensure the content is delivered in a way that connects to you as a person. but at the level in which it needs to be delivered. So let's continue watching the video. I don't want to get caught up, but I did want to stop for a moment and then just share that with you as it relates to student identity and why it's so important that we consider that in this topic.
Our identities shape how we experience the world, and some of our identities give us privilege. Personally, I never have to think when I go somewhere whether or not there's an elevator or if I have to run up a few flights of stairs. My able bodied privilege means that I never have to think about these things. But as a brown person, a Muslim, I'm more cautious about how I engage the police, especially at airports and border crossings, because I can always be sure that I'm going to be randomly selected. These are things that I have to think about every single day, but not everyone has to.
So let's stop there. So what I want you to do, because this is an interactive conversation that I always have with you guys, the first thing I want you to do is in the comments, I just want you to tell me in 1, 2, 3, or 4 words, what is your identity? How do you identify, or how do you want people to see you in this world? Okay. So I'm asking you in the comments, YouTube, Periscope, Facebook, no matter where you are, everybody has access to comment, and I'm looking at all the comments now. I want you to tell me in 1 word, 2 words, 3 words, how many words you want to. Describe to me your identity. How do you identify? How do you want to be viewed in the world? And I'm going to share some of what you say, unless you tell me not to, okay? How do you want to be viewed, or how do you view yourself in this world? How do you want to be affirmed? And so I share with you, I want to be affirmed as a Black, heterosexual, uh, educated Southern man in this world. Those are an examples of my identities. I don't just have one, I have several. And I could have listed more, but those are just examples of ways I could identify myself. Black, heterosexual, male, Southern. That's 4, right? I could say father. I could say Christian. I could say educated. All right. I could go on. There's more, but I want you to tell me, how do you identify? All right. So let's take a few seconds in the comments. I'm looking and I'm waiting. I'm going to share some of your feedback for the group to see, and then we will continue. Um, but I just want you to see how identities are different. They're very different in some situations. Um, and in some situations, you may not be as valued as you would like to be, um, based on your identity, on how you view yourself. All right. So I'm looking for identities. It could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 3. It's up to you. Whatever you want to share. Whatever you want to share. So while we're waiting, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to keep playing the video. While you're watching, you can go ahead and type in the comments. That'll be the best way to kind of navigate through this and kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
In my own home, my sons who are racialized Black at times have different experiences with the police than even I do. One day, in addressing this with one of my sons who was stopped a couple of times on his way home from school and telling him how to respond, he said to me, "Dad, it's not fair." I said to him, "Son, this isn't about what's fair. This is about keeping you alive." Our identities shape how we experience the world and how people see and respond to us. As a principal, one day I put out a great aspiration statement in one of our newsletters. I said, in this school, we want everyone to want to run to school every day. Until someone asked me, what if someone can't run? Today, as the superintendent of equity, anti-racism, and anti-oppression, I work in one of the largest boards on the part of Turtle Island we call Canada. We serve approximately 250,000 students. When we as senior leaders got together and looked at our data, it underscored these realities. For example, our student population, 12% of them are Black. But by the time they graduate, 42% of Black students would have been suspended at least once.
Okay, so let's stop there. So I'm going to stop because I also want to share some of the things you all have said in the comments. Thank you guys for getting in and responding. Um, so in terms of identity, um, one person says they identify as a mother. Okay, and that will be something that will connect with many people. Many people are mothers and identify as a mother because that's very important to them. Some of our students identify not only as students, but they identify as mothers because they are mothers. Um, Somebody said that they identify as a lady. Somebody else says they identify as a black woman. Somebody else went on to say mother as well. And then a black female child of God. And based on those few examples that have been given, um, what is said by Mr. Chaniqua in the video is that however you view yourself is how you experience the world. Who you are shapes how you experience the world. So not so much how you view the world, but it also shapes how you experience the world. And I think it's profound. I want you to think about this as a student. How you identify as a student will shape how you experience school. How you view yourself as a student will shape how you experience learning. How you view yourself as a student will shape how you value yourself as a learner. And it will also shape how you view and experience others and how they view you, how they affirm you, how they recognize you, and ultimately how they honor you just as a person. So, how I experience the world as a black man, or how I experience school as a black young man, may be totally different how someone else experienced school as a young white girl. The experiences won't be the same. But does that mean that those two students who are totally different can't be valued and affirmed in the same environment? The answer is yes, they can. Should they be affirmed and valued in the same environment? The answer is yes, they should. But are they being affirmed and valued in these environments? Across the board, I would say no. And as students enter back into school after the holidays, in the midst of this America, based on what we've seen, and let's not dismiss the power of media, because the things that you don't talk about in school, it doesn't disconnect you, or it doesn't dismiss the fact that your students are still having experiences and are exposed to this information. Media is powerful. What we have to do as educators is to use the power of media to show our students you have worth, you are valued, you are important, you have a place not only in the school but in the world. And we can't wait until we release you out and release your power to do what it is called to do, whatever that is. But that is what affirming is, affirming who you are and what you bring to the table, and that it is, whatever that thing is important and has a place. Okay? So how your students view themselves, how they identify shapes how they experience the world, because their experiences are with us, the adults, with teachers, with educators, with schools, with communities, with cities, and with the nation itself. Okay? So Miss Louder, I hear you. I honor you as a black queen. I honor your identity. I honor who you are. I honor everything you bring to the table. I honor your future. I honor your present, but I also honor your past. That's what affirming is. That's what valuing is. It values the whole person. And so, this whole idea now of valuing and teaching to the whole child, you can't teach to the whole child if you don't affirm and value the identity of the child. It is important in collaboration. All those things are important. So let's get back to this video because I don't want to go on and on and on. But as you can tell, I'm getting excited. So I need to take a break, play the video, and I need to calm down. As I'm showing the video, get in the comments. Tell me what you're thinking about. I'm going to be viewing it. I'm going to flash it up there. We need you in the comments so we can have the best conversation possible. I am playing the video now. Let's get back into it.
Education is a colonial project. The systems and structures, the laws and the cultures were created based on the beliefs and attitudes of those who were in power at that time. Some of those beliefs included pieces like indigenous people are uncivilized and they need to be dispossessed of the land, that black people existed for the economic benefit of those in power, that women were less than men and so they shouldn't be allowed to vote or hold public office, that to us LGBT identifying people needed to be medically fixed or locked away, and that people with disabilities should be locked away. All of these were coded into the systems and structures around education. The systems and structure reflected those beliefs and attitudes, and so they're not neutral. We have to accept that they work for some and not for other children.
So let me say this really quickly. And again, I am not advocating for a party, but I'm just stating the facts. And I think part of the problem in this country is that we aren't realists and we're not honest about the country's past. So when we talk about black, brown, those in poverty, those who with disabilities, those are a marginalized group of people. The systems of education were not set up by, nor were they set up for marginalized groups. Okay, let me say that again, because I think that's important in this conversation, in the context of what we're talking about. Black, brown, students in poverty, students with disability, and in many cases women, are marginalized groups in this country. The systems of education were not set up by nor for marginalized groups. So you may ask yourself, why is Dr. Holmes having this conversation about affirming and valuing all students? I just answered your question. Because the need is there based on how the system of education was established, right? And how certain people came into the system was not one that was welcomed by all. And it was not viewed as a necessity, nor was it always viewed as a common good, but it was allowed. And there's a difference, because the difference is in the real intent, okay? So marginalized groups were not intended to be educated. Education systems was not set up for those groups, which is why it's important we talk about affirming and valuing students. And so the America then, has it vanished? Is the America of the 1950s non-existent? Is the America of slavery and segregation and Jim Crow non-existent? No, that America still exists in factions and portions all over this world, all over this country. So we can't stop talking about it because it exists. And if we stop talking about it, then we stop advocating for all students. And we stop providing the support that teachers need to ensure they understand the need and the strategies that are required to support all learners being or receiving the quality of instruction that they deserve, not need, that they deserve. And there's a difference. And so I'm very particular about the words that I choose to use. So I made that point. Let's keep going.
Since identity is the common factor in who's successful and unsuccessful, systems need to engage in learning and unlearning about identity in order to be able to change those outcomes. Einstein tells us that the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same things, hoping for different results. As adults, none of us check our identities at the door, whether we're male, female, trans, black or white, Muslim, Jewish, or Christian. These things are important parts of who we are. We need to move away from saying things like school is only about learning or things like I don't see color, because students experience their identities in school every single day. Identities are complex and they intersect. So a child who's gay will face barriers in our schools. But if that child happens to be a black, Muslim, lesbian child with a disability coming out of poverty, she will face compounding barriers.
Stop, stop, stop. I hope you guys are listening. This is, first of all, I am enjoying him. Of course, I watched this video before I showed it to you all. Um, this is a 10-minute video, and we're already almost 40 minutes into Teacher Talks tonight, and we're probably halfway through. But let's put up one of the comments that he said, and I want to know what you think about it. And I want you to, and most of you all are adults that watch me. Okay, so most children don't watch this show, but many adults, parents, teachers, who are parents and teachers, leaders, administrators, those in academia watch this. And even if they don't watch it live tonight, many people watch this show after it has already gone live and is still posted on YouTube. So here is the question. Think about your experience, because years ago and now could be different. But what he says is your identity shapes, or the identity of the student shapes who is and is not successful in education. Your identity, and I want you to put in what your identity is in your mind. So your identity, Christopher Holmes, as a black, straight Christian man in the South, shapes who is and is not successful in education. Think about it. Would you agree or disagree with that? Put it in the comments. With your identity, whatever your identity is, you know how you identify. Would you say your identity has shaped your success in education? Or would you say that it has not shaped your success in education, that your experience had nothing to do with who you are, but your experience and success in schools had everything to do with how you committed to the institution itself? Just tell me yes or no. Did it shape it or did it not? That's what I'm asking. I would have to say, as you all get in the comments, I would have to say my experience as a black heterosexual male living in the South definitely shaped my experience in education. I had to go through many challenges and perceptions in order to debunk or to disprove what was expected of me. Let me say this. My experience in high school was one where I don't think I was expected to be successful, which shaped my experience and the initial challenges I had in college because of my identity. Okay? Because of my identity, I faced challenges in high school that shaped also my post-secondary experience. So would you say that your identity contributed to, played into your level of success in education? Yes or no? That's all I'm asking. I'm not looking for a long, drawn-out explanation from you. But yes or no, do you think it played into your success or your lack of success? Do you think how you were treated, how people experienced you, how people interacted with you was based on your identity, or was it just based on who you presented yourself to be? If you're just a mean, nasty person, that had nothing to do that you were a black man or a white woman. You're just a mean, nasty person, and people's interactions with you shaped your success or your lack of success. Or if you were just super immature and you hadn't really found your own identity and you were just going through the motions, that could have shaped some of your experiences, but it had nothing to do with how you identified and how people viewed you. They didn't devalue you because you were black and a male, or because you were black and a woman, or because you were Hispanic and a female. It was because you were just immature, you were rude and disrespectful. And that's not your identities, but those are your behaviors. And those two things are not simultaneous, they are separate. And that's another conversation as it relates to perception of people and cultures based on who they are. But we're not going to get into that, right? So as you get into the comments, I'm going to go back to the video and watch a few more seconds of this before we kind of get back into the conversation.
As a teacher and a principal, what that meant was I needed to get to know my students well beyond their likes and dislikes. In my classroom, I made sure there were snacks available, it was a positive space for LGBT identifying students, and there was a space to pray. As a beginning teacher, I chose to work in challenging neighborhoods to be able to make a difference in the lives of children. In order to prepare them for life in the real world, I used to give lots of homework until I read the research that says it has very little value for learning outcomes. And in fact, it reinforces the disparity between students, especially those coming from poverty. I chose to work in those schools to be able to try and make a difference. But upon self reflection, I realized that I was the one creating the barrier. This learning over time meant for me that I had to try and do things differently. Looking at a human rights approach, inclusive design is an approach that often thinks about people with disabilities. Working with a group of educators, we looked at how inclusive design and approach could be constructed that would be used throughout education that affirmed all identities in classroom spaces. And it begins by thinking about those identities and thinking about who is most marginalized amongst them. As a teacher or principal, it meant getting to know their families, their family structures, their histories, their languages, and to make sure it was reflected in the ethos of school and class. As a superintendent, I challenged my principals to think about what groups of students are going into which high school pathways and why, which groups of students are being suspended or not, and how might we be complicit in those outcomes.
Stop right there. Stop right there. I hope you guys are enjoying this. Maybe because I'm just a nerd and I love education that I am like really, really enjoying this. Now many of you guys didn't do what I told you to do, which was get into the comments and tell me yes or no whether your identity shaped the success or the lack of success in school. So yeah, I owe you one. So if you're on Facebook, I need you to like and comment, get in the comments. If you're on YouTube, like, comment, share, and subscribe. And for those of you that are on Periscope, you can do the same thing. You can definitely get in the conversation by getting in the comment section. But no matter where you are, again, thank you for watching. You don't have to be here. So thank you for taking time out to be a part of this show, be a part of this conversation, and sharing it with others because we can't make a difference. Let the last 24, 48 hours be an example. We can't make a difference if we don't get involved and become active. So I want to pick up with this statement. He says that the inclusive approach is one that affirms all identities. And I know we're talking about teachers and we're talking about leaders, ensuring that there are some things in place or that there is a strong belief that our leaders have in their schools and in their districts that all students should and will be affirmed, no matter who they are, no matter how they identify. But what I want to do now is pivot slightly. We're going to come back to education. But this entire message, this approach, does not only apply to teachers, it also applies to parents. And why do you think I say that? The inclusive approach to affirm all children is also one that applies to parents. Why do you think I say that? And why do you think that's important? I'm going to give you two reasons, but I'm going to give you a few seconds to maybe tell me why you think I said that. Why, as a parent, here's the question: why, as a parent, is it important that you affirm your child's or your children's identity? I'm going to put it in the comment because I think this is an important conversation that I had not planned to have, but I think it's one that is needed and necessary. Why, as a parent, is it important for you to affirm your child's or your children's identity? Why is that important? You tell me. I'm a parent as well, so I have an idea. But as a parent, why is it important? Because I do have a lot of people that tune in that are part of different parent groups because I appeal to those that advocate from the parent end as well. So as a parent, the question is, why is it important for you to affirm your child's identity? I'm going to tell you one reason why it's important. One, it's important because many of us who may look the same as our children and come from the same racial background and even the same sex, we still may not have the same identities. One, there's a generational difference in terms of identity. So you may be a Generation X and your child may be a Generation Z. The experiences of the world between those two generations are totally different. So that alone creates some challenges in terms of connecting. Um, Also, how you affirm your students or how you affirm your children translate into how they value themselves and present themselves in the schooling environment. If your child does not feel affirmed and valued by you at home, what does that look like when they enter into a school building? Let me ask that question again, and this is for you parents out there, or anybody that mentors or guides young children. If you don't value and affirm your child or your children in the context and safety of your home or your community or your cultures, what does that look like when they present themselves in a schooling environment, especially in the context of a place where the system itself was not set up for their marginalized identities? What does that look like? Simply, I can hear somebody like my mom or my aunt saying, it looks like a mess, right? It looks like a mess. So the affirming has to take place first at home. We do the affirming as parents, and the schools support the affirmations and values we've already placed on our children when they get there. But many times, students enter into a school looking for acceptance and affirmation and value because they have not gotten it from the home environment. We've got to work on that as well because those two things can't operate in isolation. They have to work in conjunction with each other. That's why we say the home has to support what happens at school. Okay? They have to support one another, but one has to take place before the other occurs. It has to happen at home before it happens at school. Because if it doesn't happen at home, sometimes they look for it at school, sometimes they're not looking for it at school. So they present themselves in a lost type of way because they don't know who they are. That's scary. Okay? That's scary. But in the context of a school environment, of a school district, it is our responsibility because we may not always know that on the onset. We don't know who they are when they walk in the door. We only get a chance to know them and then experience them for ourselves weeks in, sometimes months in, if we have students that don't even show up on a daily basis, especially during a pandemic. The ability to build relationships right now is non-existent. So how are we doing that? How have we set that up in a virtual slash remote slash dual model setting? All right. How are we doing that? Leaders, how have you been accountable for that? Teachers, how have you been responsible for that? And parents, how have you supported that? Because this is not a singular role. It is an all-in, hands-on-deck responsibility from multiple stakeholders. All right, let's get back into the video. We have maybe 3 more minutes, so I want to finish this before we wrap up for the night. All right, let's go.
Transformation can only begin when we turn our gaze towards us. Once we know who is most marginalized and underserved, I work with principals to begin school improvement planning with those students first in mind. What types of structures will serve to engage and inspire them? Which structures need to be dismantled? How are we aligning our budget and our resources to make sure that this is a priority? Finally, and most importantly, we have to think about the adult learning necessary, about the identities that we hold in relation to the identities of the students that we serve. How does that shape how we think about instruction, curriculum, achievement, well-being, and success? These are difficult conversations to have, but they are the most important. The reason that they're so hard is they hit us at the core of who we are. Remember, I saw myself as a nice person, but my niceness and my good intentions wasn't enough. It was my
Okay, so let's look at 2 things that he said. God, I hope y'all are enjoying this. I'm enjoying this. I'm probably enjoying this too much because you should be enjoying it more than I am. But I just have to be honest. This is good, rich conversation. Okay, so everybody who has been on here, Dr. Walker, Kendall, Nicole Ash, everybody who's been on here, I'm telling you, we've got to think about this because this is very, very deep conversation. So the first thing he says is this: transformation occurs when we turn the focus towards us, the adults. Okay, we can't focus transformation on the child, on the student. We have to focus, if we want to make it better, if we want to make a difference, we can't hope that the other person changes. The change has to start first with you. And the second thing is, if we want to have transformation that allows us to affirm and value students, we've got to think about not only the resources that have to be in place, but what adult learning is necessary. Because what he says is, when you do this, sometimes it contradicts or comes in conflict with who you are and what you believe. So let me give you an example because I think it's important. If I am a 55, 60-year-old white male from the South who has a very strong religious value system, and I teach in an all-black impoverished school, and I encounter a young black lesbian female that I have the responsibility to instruct, do you think my ability to affirm and value that student will be challenged based on who I am and how they identify? Let's be honest. A 60-year-old white male from the South with a strong religious value, Bible Belt, okay, is now teaching in a all-black impoverished environment and has responsibility of teaching a young black lesbian female. Will who they view themselves come in conflict with their ability to value and affirm that student? Is it possible? Is it possible? And some of us speak in the concrete as if it won't happen, but we have to think about what is possible and put things in place that address the possibilities. And I'm saying to you, that is a strong possibility because how they view themselves and what they believe is in conflict with how this young woman identifies and will experience and is valued in the world. in this America. That's just a fact. We have to be honest. We have to be honest. And it's when you are honest with yourself and what may be a challenge is when the transformation can take place. Okay. So let's keep watching. We're almost finished for the night. Okay, guys. Thank you for staying with me.
Impact that mattered. In spite of having experienced poverty and moments of homelessness myself, when I taught in the classroom, I reverted back to the way I was taught, both in school and when I was at the Faculty of Education. Sometimes we feel defensive or embarrassed and we don't want to have these conversations. But it's important that we do not hold marginalized students hostage to our emotions and fragility as adults. As a teacher, principal, or superintendent, I try to keep this in mind whenever I'm making decisions. Otherwise, I'm going to use my own experiences and identities to be able to understand and try to solve problems, and that will make me miss critical pieces that affects whole groups of students. I try to remember that as a cisgendered person who's making decisions on behalf of trans children, or as a male making decisions on behalf of girls. This learning is not about creating feelings of blame, shame, or guilt, but about helping us to do better for the students that we serve, exactly why we came to education to begin with. Today in my board, we have a long way to go, but we're on the journey. Through our achievement and well-being goals, we're working to explicitly identify which groups of students are overrepresented in the gaps. We're working to make sure that they see their lives and experiences and abilities reflected in the curriculum, in the classrooms, in the instruction, the experiences, and the staff. Through our equity goals, we're focused on the learning that we as adults need to do in order to be able to think about our identities in relation to theirs, so that we move away from this is the way it's always been done to why can't we do it differently? I came to public education in order to make a difference in the lives of the children that I serve. Knowing their identities, abilities, and lived experiences is the key to unlocking that potential. Understanding how our own identities interact with theirs in these structures gives us the opportunity, the chance for innovation, and the ability to change the trajectory of public education in a way that will work for every single student that we serve.
All right, so that is the entire video. It is 9:59. I'm going to share some a few last thoughts with you, excuse me, and then we're going to wrap up. So one thing that he said, and once again, I'm in the comments. So if you're in the comments, I am looking for your feedback, and I'm going to share that on the screen. Um, but one of the things that he says is we cannot hold marginalized students hostage to our emotions and our experiences as well as our beliefs. We can't hold marginalized students hostage to our emotions and our experiences and our beliefs. It's not transformative, right? So we can't lock them into what we perceive them to be, but we've yet to have the experience with them. That's not fair to students and who they are and what they truly bring to the table, because they are so much more than the identities that they have, and then many times the perceptions that we attach to those identities, although not having real experiences. That's not fair to the child. That's not fair to the learner. So we've got to remove the chains, so to speak. We've got to remove the labeling that we have attached to those identities, because it's only when we do that we can release them as hostages and allow them to just live in their truest forms of whatever that is, of whatever that is. Okay. The second thing that he said that I just have to share with you is he says is one way to affirm students is to provide the ability for our students to see themselves in the instruction and in the curriculum. One way to affirm it, if you never say it, What is one way you can affirm and value students indirectly? And that is if they see themselves in your instruction and they see themselves in the curriculum. How powerful would it be for a homosexual or transgender student to read a story or to take part of an activity that includes a transgender child slash student? How powerful is it when Black students see themselves in the curriculum or in your instruction as an example or as a model for learning? How powerful would it be if a disabled child felt valued and affirmed if they saw themselves in the instruction, in the curriculum, in the models, in the examples, maybe even in an assessment? The scenario included who I am, who I identify as, what I value. That in itself is affirming. And lastly, what he says is we have a long way to go in order to get there. The road is long, the road is rough, but is it worth traveling? And the answer is yes. If we believe that all students deserve a high quality education, and we believe that all students have the ability to learn, then I say buckle up, saddle up, strap up, mask up, and get your butt on the road and let your students know how important they are to you. And I mean everything that they are: their sex, their race, their gender, their religion, their culture, their community, their beliefs, their values, their interests, and even the things that they detest. They help to identify who they are and how they shape and experience not just the school, but also the world. And to you, my friends, that is very important in the discussion of student achievement, high quality education, equality, and equity, because those are all issues that I find important, especially in the area of educational policy. So, with that, I say thank you so much for watching. I honor you. I appreciate you. Again, for those who have tuned in for the first time this year, I say Happy New Year. And I'll look forward to seeing you next week on Teacher Talks, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. As always, stay safe and be blessed.